Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. So, this morning, I am going to try something a little different. Um, Not sure how I'm going to be able to do it, but I don't know if it's going to work. So, we'll have to see. It may not work this morning, but I am learning that you learn something new every day. Okay. So, guys, what we're here to do this morning is just, again, Latisha live with your morning drive. So I'm so excited about this morning because so many amazing things take place. So many of you have been inboxing and just making me feel so wonderful, allowing me to know and letting me know like how you guys been feeling about the videos and how they've been empowering you. Like, guys, we have people watching all the way in Africa. So you know I'm like really extremely excited about this thing. Just some quick reminders. Tonight I'll be on, let me see, at 8 p.m. I'll be on women's empowerment. I want to say that's what it is. But we'll figure it all out. So, nonetheless, I'm trying to watch myself as well so I can kind of get an understanding of how this goes, what it looks like, what you guys see, what you guys don't see, because I'm trying to work some things out, right? So, nonetheless, thank you guys for coming this morning, for spending your morning with me. Again, we didn't come just to simply encourage. We come to encourage and empower so that you can evolve. I'm going to take these off because of the glare. So, I want you guys to just be ready. Be ready to be not just motivated, but driven. Not any type of drive, but you need a good drive that's going to impact and empower. That's going to build up and not tear down, honey. That's what we're about in the mornings, early mornings, you guys. I've been up, I've been preparing myself and getting things together because I want us to continue to, it's literally a boot camp. So everything lines itself up. So, I had to explain like the first day what it was all about. Then the second day, so you can understand what empowers mean, because some of you have no clue what it means to be empowered. So, with that being said, I want us to continue to move on. Now, I told you guys that there were 4 steps: acknowledge, accept, embrace, and evolve. Today, we're going to focus on the very first one, which is acknowledge. Okay. So I'm going to give you the definition of acknowledge. And there's a reason that I started with empower first, right? Because I need you to understand some things. In order for you to fully and adequately move forward like you desire to move forward, you're really going to have to authentically understand what it is that it means to be empowered, because sometimes we confuse encouragement with empowerment. So, with that being said, many things you have allowed to become a fact in your life, okay? And these elements are scars and traumas that have evolved into a false truth. Okay, so what happens is a situation happens in your life, or it happens more than once, and you are to believe that this is your path. This is the very thing that you're going to be, or this is how you're supposed to be, because of this traumatic situation that may have taken place in your life. So today is going to be a little bit more personable, because at some point you're going to have to acknowledge the truth. You're going to have to acknowledge that all things are not somebody else's situation, or all things are not somebody else's fault. So you're going to have to figure out where and what and why this is so important and needs to be addressed first, because we'll accept some stuff but we're not willing to acknowledge it, or we'll acknowledge some things but we won't accept it. So today, like I said, we're just going to focus on acknowledge and what it means to acknowledge. So first, let me give you the definition of acknowledge. Why? Because acknowledging something is deeper than just saying yes. Because sometimes we just say yes to get people off of our backs. There are some things that we're going to have to acknowledge that did have an impact on how we interact, on how we respond, and on how we reply with other people. Because the truth of the matter is, and like I keep telling y'all, mindset matters, right? So you're going to have to begin to acknowledge and embrace some stuff. And you're not going to be wanting to do that, but this is the reason that we're here. I need you to get to the meat of it and the root of it, and decide, you know what, this is truth. The truth of the matter is, you have not acknowledged a lot of things. because of the scars and the trauma that it has impacted. And so when you don't acknowledge it, you don't realize that these things have created a false truth in your life. And so you believe you have to be a certain way because of this issue. And the earlier you are when these things take place, a lot of times it takes longer for you to become free from them, because you really at an early age, you don't know how to acknowledge it. So at this point, this is going to get real personal. It's going to get real serious, because the only way I know how to give you an example is to literally tell you truth and factual things. So let's start with the definition of acknowledge. Acknowledge means to accept or admit the existence or truth of a thing. All right. So you got to accept and admit it, right? The truth of a thing. Recognizing the fact or importance or quality of, right? Because a lot of you don't want to believe that certain things that happen in your life that were traumatic are a direct effect of how it affects your life, right? So you don't want to take, well, because this happened, this is why I do this. And so I'm going to, like I said today, it's going to be a little bit more personable, because I need you guys to understand that until you acknowledge it, the hurt, the pain, the anger, the hate, the disbelief, the low self-esteem, until you acknowledge these things, you will never be able to move forward like you want to. You will never be able to evolve. You cannot evolve backwards. And allowing things from your past and the trauma from your past to hold you back will literally keep you in bondage. It will keep you bound in such a way that you're never going to be able to move forward. So again, acknowledge is to accept or admit the existence of a truth or truth of a thing. So you got to acknowledge that, you know what, maybe I am motivated by something negative, because a lot of us don't want to accept that the trauma is the reason we interact, respond, and reply the way that we do. That the scars have literally allowed us to not be able to feel stuff. Because you know how you can have a scar on your arm, sometimes you touch it, it's lumpy, but you're not really getting the full effect of like your natural, like touching your skin. And so you want to recognize the fact or importance or quality of a thing. Okay, so a lot of times people who've always been told that they'll never be nothing. I'm going to start with that. You won't be nothing. You won't have nothing. You're not going to ever be nothing. What you making good grades for, you're not going to go to college. Like all these type of things. So you find yourself on a grind. You find yourself driven. Remember yesterday we spoke about you can be, or the day before yesterday, we spoke about you could have a drive for something, but it don't necessarily has to be a good drive. It could be a very much so negative drive. So therefore, you have to find out what's driving you. And if you're always trying to prove people wrong, if you're always trying to prove that you can, some of you are still trying to prove stuff to people who could care less, because you have yet to acknowledge and accept that that negative situation is your drive and it's killing you. It's overtaking you. It's not allowing you to be the truest you can be. Your truth is not the trauma that took place in your life. Your truth is not the scars that you still bear, but because you won't acknowledge that it hurt. Hey, Veronica, because you won't acknowledge that it hurt, because you will not accept the existence that this thing actually did take place. This thing actually did change the way I do a thing, change the way that I move about, change the way that I act. Now you're hindering yourself. Because again, yesterday, remember I told you guys, in order for you to be empowered, there's 4 steps: acknowledge, accept, embrace, and evolve. But we're not going to be able to move forward until we start with the first step, and that's acknowledging. That's recognizing that, you know what, these wounds, these scars, this trauma, this stuff do affect how I interact with people. Like I stated earlier, we're going to get kind of personal today. So let's talk about me, myself. I was molested. I grew up in an abusive household. I know what it's like to have people tell me God don't want to hear nothing that I have to say. So without understanding these things, I know what it's like for a grown man to tell me he gonna teach me how to play mama and daddy, and I'm 3 years old. I did not know at that time that those seeds that had been dropped in my life would affect how I operated, would affect how I interacted with other people. And when I got older, I didn't know how to acknowledge that this is why my relationships are like they are. This is why I have no connection. This is why when I was about 16, 17, if you wanted to have any type of intercourse with me, I didn't want to date you. I had no clue that had something to do with being violated and being molested. I didn't know that. So I'm just going through life thinking that I just don't want that part of my life, because I had yet to acknowledge that the reason I felt that way was because of the trauma that took place in my life. So now I'm growing up, right? Because I don't realize the seed that has been planted in my life. So I have this other side that used to come out. That's what I would call it. And I would be very promiscuous to a point, because I wanted to be in control. You were not going to tell me what I could and could not do. You were not going to raise, especially if you was a dude, you were not going to raise your voice at me. And I didn't play with people. I didn't wrestle. Oh, please don't do that. Because now you're trying to test my strength. I didn't know, or I didn't understand to acknowledge that these things were because of the trauma that took place in my life. These things were because of what took place and what happened. So I didn't understand that I had to acknowledge that I was in pain, that I was hurting, and that the decisions I was making was because of the trauma that took place when I was a child. I didn't realize that me seeing my father hang my mother over a balcony at a very young age because we were going to go to church, I didn't realize that had taken an effect on my life. I didn't realize that seeing my dad fight my mother literally had something to do with why I did not like to wrestle with dudes. I did not realize that I didn't want a guy to take control of me or have any type of intimacy, because to me that was dirty. I did not realize that was because of the trauma that had taken place when I was 2 and 3 years old. Because I wasn't old enough to realize or acknowledge that this thing is my truth, that it was not my fault, and I did not choose this path for myself. So now we're going to fast forward, and I'm in the church, and I'm praising God, and I'm going to the altar, because clearly I got a fornicating demon, right? Clearly something's wrong with me, because when I go to church and the service is real high, and babe, I'm getting all the prophecies and everything that people want to talk about. When I get home, I'm battling in my flesh. I'm having all kind of dreams and all kind of thoughts, and all kind of things are happening, but I don't know how to explain it. All I know is, based on what I've been taught, it's me, and I'm dirty. And I know I had to acknowledge the trauma that had tried to make this false fact my true fact. So I'm going to the altar, I'm sitting there, and I'm crying out, because clearly I'm dirty. Clearly I'm messy. Clearly it's something wrong with me. And I'm crying out to God to release me from this fornicating demon. And I've got people laying hands on me, and I had been suspended, honey, because I had told the pastor what I had done, and she couldn't understand why I had no real connection with what had happened. Like, I was just like, well, I fornicated. She's staring at me because I had no emotional. Because again, you don't understand a thing. If you don't understand somebody's beginning, sometimes it's hard for you to navigate and negotiate where they're at. So now I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to grow from this thing? Because this is affecting me. I wanted boyfriends in high school, but if it seemed like they were trying to be intimate with me, I didn't like that. I rejected that. I wanted to, but I didn't realize the trauma had begun to try to create a truth in my life that was not factual. So I would go to the altar believing I was delivered. And for 7 to 14 days or 30 days or however many days you want this to be, I felt good. It's like a medication. It's like a numbing thing. Because see, we've been taught to prune a hedge. But ain't nobody telling you got to pull that thing up from the root if you ever want change to take place. You have to acknowledge the trauma. You have to acknowledge the scar. You have to acknowledge the wounds, because if you don't, it will create a false truth about your attitude, about your actions, about your response, about your reply, about what you trust, about what you don't. So you'll have people say, oh, I put my wall up because of these hurts. No, it's deeper than a hurt, sweetie. Because you're making that your truth. Now you're comparing every guy or woman or situation to the trauma. And now you've created this wall or this barrier of truth because you have yet to acknowledge at some point you are allowing this to control you. See, when you don't acknowledge a fact, because again, acknowledge is to accept and admit an existence or truth of something. So some of you don't want to admit that there was a trauma in my life that almost destroyed me. So now you create this wall and this barrier. And so now you say you want a husband, but you really don't want a husband because of some stuff that happened. And so you don't even realize that I've created a false truth because I'm not willing to acknowledge that, wait a minute. At some point, it's you. See, at some point, I had to not allow my flesh to control my actions. But because nobody had ever told me, hey, Tisha, you're acting like this because you were violated. You're acting like this because your father beat your mother. You're acting like this because you were introduced to some very heinous and ugly things at an early age. And now what's happening is it's trying to create a false truth for you. So that's why you react a certain way. That's why you move about a certain way. That's why you talk a certain way. And I didn't understand why when people would try to correct me, I took offense to it. It was like, and then now I'm being told I'm rebellious and I don't want to accept authority and I don't want to submit to authority. But nobody knew that previous to all this, all the authority in my life abused their position. Again, a grown man told me he was going to teach me how to play mom and daddy. Again, my auntie told me she wanted to fight me at a very early age. I was 10, y'all. Let's just try that. At an early age, my grandma, who I love right now to this day, told me God didn't want to hear nothing I had to say. So those that I trusted that were in an authoritative figure helped create this false wall in my life because nobody took the time to help me acknowledge that, Tisha, that hurts. Nobody wants to hear that God don't hear you because you're the one being in a traumatic situation. I was the one being verbally, physically, and mentally abused. And so when you feel like you don't have nowhere to go, when you feel like you don't know exactly how and to and what and which way to do a thing, now you're not sure how you're supposed to operate. So now you're trying to understand, how do I acknowledge this trauma because it hurts? See, that's why it's 4 steps: acknowledge, accept, embrace, and evolve. Because in the acknowledgement, the hurt manifests. In the acknowledgement, the pain almost seemed real. The pain just keep like going and going and going. And you're thinking, how is this thing still controlling me 15, 16, 20, 30 years later? There are women and men right now, because they refuse to accept and acknowledge it. The pain controls their life. The pain controls their actions. The pain controls their truth. The pain keeps them from evolving because if they acknowledge the pain, they think that it's going to hurt even more. But you have to understand, in the acknowledgement and the acceptance gives you the power and the ability to embrace it and evolve from it. But if you don't acknowledge it, if I had not acknowledged that these choices that I am making, again, I had to acknowledge that I was making the choices because I was allowing my flesh to control my actions. You couldn't tell me nothing. I didn't care about your title, about your name, about we don't have this conversation at all. If I felt like you were getting ready to belittle me because I knew what that sounded like. If you were getting ready to put me down because I knew what that sounded like. If I felt like you was coming at me sideways, I knew how to get you first. That's why people always say to me, Tisha, you got a quick comeback. I had to have one because I know what it's like to be hit hard and then told that I couldn't say nothing. See, when you grow up in an abusive household, you learn at an early age how to shut your mouth because everybody not supposed to be in your business. And what happened in this house, stay in this house. Well, that almost got my mother killed. So no, I don't abide by that rule anymore. So the anger was there. The rebellion was there because nobody took the time to even in themselves acknowledge that, wait a minute, something about this is not right. So when I got older and I began to understand that this is deeper than running to an altar. This right here, this is deeper than me just getting out there crying and just saying, Baba, because again, I'm Pentecostal. So, we speak in tongues, we fast and we pray. And they teach us that some things only come out through fasting and prayer. But you got to understand what that really means. Because when you go on a real fast and you pray about a thing, that thing has to come up and come out. It don't just sit there and just be like, oh, I'm not going to bother you anymore. That's not real life. And then there are some things that are going to be a thorn in your flesh. It ain't never going away. So how do I keep that thing subject to me? How do I keep that thing from manifesting? Because I acknowledge, wait a minute. Hey, maybe I shouldn't hang out with so-and-so. Maybe I shouldn't go to this particular place, because when I hang around these kind of people, certain stuff happens. But because most of you don't want to take control of it, you want your emotions to guide you. You want your emotions to lead you. And then you want to justify the choices that you're making that clearly at some point is 100% you. At some point I had to realize I want to tell people off because I want to tell them off. I can't keep using what happened to me at 12 and 6 and 8 and even young as 3. I couldn't keep using that as my excuse. So now what am I going to do? I have to acknowledge that at some point I'm choosing to do this. Because you keep allowing that wall to build and build until you no longer can identify yourself. The importance of acknowledging something is so that you can bring it to the table. How I gotta make it visible. I gotta put this thing out here and say, you know what? This is what I got on my table. I was molested. I was violated. I was bullied. I grew up in an abusive household. Being poor really didn't bother me because I didn't really know I was poor, right? So I had an amazing mom. In spite of all the hell we went through, I had an amazing mom. So I didn't realize that I was poor, right? So you have all these things and I bring them to the table. Now I have to acknowledge how these things affected me. And it don't feel good to say, you know what, these promiscuous behaviors are because a grown man decided he was going to teach me how to play mama and daddy. This anger that I feel to the point to where I don't remember what I said and did is because I saw my daddy do the same thing to my mama and I'm mad about it. Sometimes you have to realize, how do I acknowledge this thing? How do I realize that this truth is destroying me and I got to do something about it? So now the more and the more and the more you begin to recognize it, and the more you begin to recognize that this toxic behavior is what's keeping me from evolving. It's what's keeping me from moving forward. It's what's keeping me from getting to the next level. And that's one of the steps into going in here and changing your mindset in order to change your life. You can't do that without the very first step, and that's acknowledging that I done been doing this wrong for a little minute now. I ain't got this part right. I really authentically don't know what I'm doing. I really don't authentically understand how I got here. And that's one of the things about people. That's why I tell people, maybe you need a life coach. Maybe you need to see a counselor. Maybe you need to see a psychologist and or psychiatrist. But whatever it is, you need something to help you bring that thing to the table and face it head on. Acknowledgement feels so dangerous at times. Acknowledgement hurts. Acknowledgement brings that pain back, because if I set it on the table, more than one person is going to see it. See, when I had to acknowledge some of this stuff, my donut. When I had to acknowledge some of this stuff, it was embarrassing. It's embarrassing to say that I was molested. It was embarrassing to say that my dad beat my mom. But the only way we were going to get help is I had to bring it to the table. I couldn't keep hiding it. It was embarrassing for me to say at 19, 20, 21 years old that I no longer have control of me because I'm allowing my flesh to control my choices. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to say that I don't even know what a real relationship's supposed to be like because I've never seen that. So I had to bring that to the table. And as you begin to bring these things to the table, as you begin to acknowledge them, what happens is you realize they all intertwine with each other. See, my issue wasn't necessarily that I was I had a fornicating demon, right? It was because I associated rejection with intimacy. And it's weird. And that also, I also assumed that I could control the situation because that situation controlled me for so long when I was little. I didn't realize that that seed had been dropped. But if I had never acknowledged it, If I had never brought it to the table, I would still be living in a false truth. I would still be living in the fact that it's everybody else's fault but mine. I would still be living in the fact that I got the right to tell off whoever I want to tell off when I want to tell them off. I probably would not be married because I had to acknowledge a lot of my behavior was because of particular things in my life, but I couldn't accept that as my truth. And the more and the more and the more and the more you grow, and the more you evolve, the more you acknowledge, the more you accept. That tomorrow we're going to talk about acceptance, because I had to accept that I couldn't change the fact that I was molested, that I grew up in an abusive household, that I was bullied, and that I was a bully. I had to accept that I couldn't change those things. That's the importance of the acknowledgement, because the acknowledgments make you recognize that for most of us, 99% of us, if we had to choose a different path, it would not be the one that we were on. Most people don't want to tell nobody off. People not out here just trying to be in promiscuous relationships and careers. Most people out here not trying to hustle you. Most people don't wake up in the morning saying that they want to be a murderer. Nobody wakes up and say they want to be a drug dealer. Like, you have to acknowledge some things, that surroundings, environments, our groups, our families sculpt a lot of the things that we do, a lot of the choices that we make. So as this week continues on, now you understand why I say that mindset matters. Because if I didn't go in and intentionally take these wires out of here, y'all, I'm telling you that it would not have been good for me. Okay? So I want you guys this week, I'm doing good and I'm almost done. I want you guys this week to sit down and bring some stuff to the table. Write it down. Be private about it. Write it down. Acknowledge some stuff that you got going on in your life that you know is not profitable for you. And as you bring that thing to the table, listen, you know, when you bring the food to the table, it smells so good. And you're just like, man, you know, you can visualize, but when you bring it to the table, you actually see it. And everything don't smell good and everything don't look good. But I'm going to show you how to accept it as it is. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to embrace it. And the embracing part comes when you learn to forgive yourself. I lived in regret for so long because I felt like I didn't do enough to help my mama. So anytime I felt like somebody was trying to go up on my mama, honey, baby, I was coming. Because I felt like I couldn't do it when I was younger. One of my cousins was violated. I felt so guilty because I felt like I couldn't help her because it was the same person who violated me. And then I felt worse because I had to acknowledge, even part of me was jealous because, again, that's another person, another guy that I trusted that rejected me. So when you acknowledge some stuff, it ain't gonna always be pretty, honey. It's gonna be some ugly stuff. But this is the only way to stop walking and operating in a false truth. That you have to realize that you have to accept and admit the existence or truth of a thing. So until tomorrow morning, y'all, we're going to be at this again, live with Latisha on your morning drive. We're going to keep it moving. Veronica and Festus. Oh, hey, Festus. Thank you guys for showing up. And for the rest of you that I know you guys, you always come in later and all. It's amazing. I love all of you. I love you guys for your support. Again, tomorrow at 6 from 6 to 6:30, I'm getting you up with your morning drive. We're going to discuss acceptance. Yeah, that was heavy. So I don't want to leave on that. So we're not leaving on this note. We're not leaving on a sad note. So I want you guys to acknowledge that you can, you will, and it's already done. Oh, I love that. So sometimes you got to just believe it. Keep saying it. I can, I will, and it's already done. I got to acknowledge that greater is already here, honey, because I see it. I see it. I feel it. I know it. I taste it. I can smell it. It's mine. I can, I will. It's already done. So until tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., same time, same place. You guys make it a great day. And don't simply be encouraged, also be empowered. So until tomorrow morning, have a great day. Bye-bye.